Hey Maciej, thank you very much for joining our Q&A for Collabwith.
Thank you for having me.
So you are the CEO of Piwik PRO. So what is Piwik PRO and what is the main difference between Piwik PRO and Google Analytics?
So Piwik PRO is a privacy-friendly analytics platform, and there are several differences how we differentiate from Google Analytics. The primary one is that we are a European company. Your data stays within EU, but also we have some privacy-focused features. So we have a built-in consent manager. We have anonymous data tracking and some other things that let you not only get high quality data from your visitor behavior, but also respect the visitor's privacy.
Yeah, and this is very important. But it's very curious because you were coming from marketing, so we will go to this later, so you know what you are talking about in this sense.
Yeah, so my actual start of the career was in more like advertising and marketing business. So I founded one of the first, this was the first block advertising network in Poland. It wasn't the first in Europe because there were some also similar companies in other countries. But we were the first in Poland, and we offered some sort of like influencer marketing, and it was interesting time because it was like there was a lot of critique initially because we were like going to monetize bloggers and they will lose their independence, etc. But it was interesting time. We built in-house technology for that, so I learned a lot about ad serving, measurement, etc. Because that was something that our advertisers required from us to report on the results of the campaigns.
Yeah, and I know because at that time I was a successful blogger in Germany, talking about how to survive in Germany, and then I was using Sanox for affiliates. So I think maybe it's something similar to this. And
yeah, so I think we were less performance-based, but more branding. So we were doing some display campaigns, but also tests of products on blogs and some other non-standard campaigns.
Yeah. So get back to Piwik PRO. Which type of businesses can you use with Piwik PRO and for which reason? Because we are using in Collabwith for the platform. So which kind of other examples?
So actually, I think Piwik PRO is like good for any business that have online presence. So whether you are e-commerce shop or a publisher or a brand, but I can tell you where we are like most successful and where we had biggest clients. So we started with this privacy pitch long before GDPR was in place, and one of our first markets were those that had already thought about privacy, so Germany, Netherlands, and so on. We are like our top verticals are government, finance industry, telecommunications, as well as healthcare, just because they not only thought about privacy, but also about the data security, which is like tracking user behavior in this verticals is like very sensitive, and you don't want to send this data to Google or to any other player that has to do with advertising. So we started with that, but now I think we are like actually taking a step forward this year with our free plan. So even for small businesses, they can use our product, and of course we are very open. We are not like monetizing this data, it's all yours.
Yeah.
But we make money on our clients that upgrade from the free plan to the enterprise and business plans, which are paid.
Yeah, you are making money, I think, with the corporates, so the big organizations and the public institutions, like they need these tools. This is a very good as well, like giving back to the startup community.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, we believe that some of the startups will grow and become our paying customers ultimately. So it's like, we have to, we are not like selling this data, so we don't make any money from that. So in order to support it, we have to have a commercial model. And I think that makes sense. And that's also the step to like encourage protecting privacy across Europe, but also other countries, rather than using products that may use your, like you may be paying with your visitors' data.
Yeah, and this is very important as well in the mindset of the people who maybe they prefer to use Google Analytics because it's easy to access, almost Google is everywhere, to say, no, if you are not paying, you are paying in another way. And
exactly.
as well to be conscious about, things are not free, and sometimes you have to pay somewhere. So this is in which sense you want to pay.
Exactly. And there's this saying like there's no free lunch. So I think that's also how it is with everything online. Like if you are not paying, then possibly you are the product. So
Yeah, exactly. So going back to the success stories, do you have one you can share, like it's not confidential and you are proud of this using Piwik PRO?
Sure. So I think that maybe I will just shortly talk about two. One that is one of our long-term government sector client. It's government of Netherlands, and they use us for all their like public services, website and e-services. And you may think like, why government uses analytics? And it's actually a very good thing because they try to spend the taxpayers' money efficiently, and this means to provide better information online and make sure that more and more citizens can do things online rather than go to the office and do it in person. So they are optimizing content, optimizing e-services, etc. So we are proud of that. They are with us for a couple of years, and they also contributed feedback to the product and help us to make it better. Another good example on the banking sector, because usually banking clients aren't that willing to share, but this one we got the approval, is Crédit Agricole. And that's a large bank. This is for branch in Poland in this case. But they are tracking not only the public side, but also how users behave in their e-banking and banking platforms. And that's something that is very useful for product managers who didn't have the right data before because they couldn't use Google for some like compliance reasons. And finance industry is interesting because there is also European Banking Authority guidelines, which tells you that you should have to use local data storage, etc.
And as you are coming from these other startups, like it's almost your second super successful entrepreneurship journey, tell us how it all started for you, when and how and why you decide that creating technology startups was a very cool thing to do.
So, I mean, it came to me like this first startup that we talked about, the blog advertising network. That's like my first baby steps. It wasn't super successful, but it was successful enough to raise investment. And then we sold the company and founded Clearcode, which is a very successful software company that builds custom solutions in the marketing technology space and advertising technology space. And it does very advanced things with like creating technology that powers today's marketing ecosystem and advertising ecosystem. But it was a natural step from having a startup in this space to a company that builds such technology. And on the way, we founded Piwik and started building on products, because we didn't want only build products for other companies in Clearcode, we wanted to do also something on our own, and that was like what led to Piwik PRO and the product that we deliver now.
Yeah, and this is sometimes marketing agencies, they want to have this shift or this kind of add-on activities to create their own startup, like they are making successful, and many of them they fail, but you didn't. So how do you see is the secrets or the best practices to make us as well this move?
So, I mean, there isn't a single recipe to do that. There are, I think, some of the things that I learned over the years that helped to make it successful, but they were not always done in a way that I was aware that this is like the way to go. Like I was learning it as well. But I think one of the things is that when you are founding a company, you are a founder, like you cannot focus on the technology. Like marketing and sales fuels the business, and if you cannot sell your product, then probably there is no like fit on the market for that, or it's not going to work. Like that's one of the things that I learned, that it's like not that you are going to hire a salesperson and he will sell the product and will focus on the technology. Another thing is like what I would do even probably earlier is like invest heavily in marketing. Like today, it's very hard to get to someone outbound. You need to do it with like creating right content that will attract people to your brand, educate them about the problem that you are solving, possibly do it also with partners. And that is very important thing that you should also start from the very beginning, from day one, when you're creating a new company or new startup. So that, and other than that, I think it's like just hard work.
Yeah, that's the truth out there.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, because when one thing is like, I always like to say, one thing is selling like bread, like everyone knows what is bread, you know, everyone knows bakery. So if you open a new one, more or less it's easier, you know, you make your own branding and that's all, and you have your own good location. But then in the point when you are selling innovation, like it's super new, like nobody knows about this. This is the tricky part, you know, like this, like you mentioned now, educate and explain is very important, because like they don't know. I don't know if you are baking or doing something completely, it's not there and it's super new, it's a completely different story.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, and I think this is also like looking for feedback, because some of these early conversations will lead to improve your product, improve your pitch. So you have to like, you have to do also a lot of listening. Like you shouldn't focus only on talking to customers, pitching, but listening and getting feedback to improve this your value proposition. Because otherwise you might be pitching something that nobody really needs, and it will be very hard to sell.
Yeah, it is part of co-creation. That's the beauty of innovation. So like you were coming from this marketing and now more privacy, how online privacy and data security fits all into this marketing advertising technologies, like leads to the origins of Piwik PRO.
So maybe one thing to clarify is that the data security and privacy, that's not always like, it's two different areas, and they have some sort of common parts to that. So with data security, it's like, you know, what kind of measures you take to make sure that your software does not have like security bugs, how it's reviewed, maybe external audit procedures, data center like security, etc. Encryption, use of encryption, many things related to that. And for privacy, some of these things are also required, because like you cannot let the hacker to access your database, because then like the privacy is gone. But there is also some other novel aspects like privacy by design, which is very interesting.
Yeah, this is super interesting. Yeah.
So do we have to collect this data to provide our service, and how does it affect the privacy of the user? Like, is getting this additional data point going to, I don't know, de-anonymize the user and make it personal data and so on? So you have to think about many things when you are collecting data about visitors. And then there are also this compliance things, like when we need consent and how should we implement it, etc. So there are a lot of things that are related to these both areas that we implement. And on one end, we work with this very data sensitive organizations. So we have to have security at the highest possible standard. But on the other end, like we have all the privacy laws that gain traction, and we have to be on top of that as well. And so because these two things were very important from the beginning, we always looked at that, and we made it part of our value proposition for our clients.
Yeah, I think this is one of the key messages. Like, think, have use your brain, because sometimes when doing platforms, there are this kind of trend, like to do nice platforms, but they are not thinking, on the functionality. So what happened with the data, which kind of data you collect, why, and how to create the whole interfaces, which is very important to have this thinking. Mm-hmm. Like multidisciplinary thinking about how you design platforms and technology.
I saw that in the advertising technology industry with some of the clients or prospects we interacted at Clearcode, and this was especially visible a few years ago, until we became more like, everyone became more aware of privacy. It's like, let's collect all the data possible and then figure out what to do with that. And that was like every conversation I had with AdTech 5 to 10 years ago. Now it's different. Like, I think the market caught up with okay, we cannot do the things this way anymore. But this was like, back in the days, this was the attitude.
Yeah. Well, I still is sometimes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm optimistic that the market will get rid of the bad players and the good ones will stay.
Yeah, I will quote you now. So because you are almost competing with Google in some cases, what is the main challenge for you to sell your product with this strong and well-known competitor? Mm-hmm. How do you what is the strategy there?
Yeah, I think this is something that a lot of startups have challenges with, because it's like, there was this saying in, I don't know whether it was 80s or 90s or even if it's today, it's like, nobody got fired for buying IBM or enter Microsoft, your brand,
that's the
Microsoft,
whole story.
Exactly. So it's it's hard. But you have to show you do things in better. Like, you don't have to be better in every category. It's sometimes sufficient to be this one, solve this one pain point that the customer have that Google or Adobe or Microsoft or other company does not solve for them. So you have to find this pain point, and that's probably the best challenging part. We see, for example, with Google Analytics, one of the examples that we have, apart from all the privacy stuff, is that you don't get support. You don't. You are on your own to implement it. So we have a team of solution architects that work with the client to onboard them, set up tracking plans, KPIs, prepare dashboards, set up some event tracking to get what they need, what kind of insights they get. And that's something we get a lot of positive feedback on, because clients love it. Like, somebody does what they would have to figure out on their own, or reading forums, or hiring a consultant. They have it as a part of the service. So, and things like that. And again, I think I will come back to the point I made in the beginning. You have to talk with customers to find this pain points.
I think that's beautifully said. Totally. And I think to see it like you care about the service and about them. And this is the extra layer of customer service. Like maybe Microsoft has, but it's like add-on, you know, like included in the price to say, because I care, like this has to work for you. That's a very nice how to as well see digitalization. Like it's not only you have a digital tool, you install and go, you know, like digitalization has as well a process, this transformation, and has to be understood. Like it's not only taking one digital tool as a piece, put it in your puzzle of inside a company, and that's all.
Yeah, exactly.
This is part of the education.
And I see like sometimes the problem is like you try to go with 3 steps ahead with innovation, and you have all those wonderful features in the client, like some things that like are hard even to understand, but the client is 2-3 levels below, and they are still learning how to use the basics, and you need to support them in that to get them to level 2, level 3, and so on.
Yeah, this is sometimes we forgot. Like this is one of the strugglings for innovation, that everyone they like, I don't know why, to talk about flying cars, you know, like going to the moon with your small business, you know. And I think that people are getting frustrated because of course they are not a flying car everywhere, you know, like, and it's more science fiction, or how there is a lot of to still to do. I think innovation is sometimes misunderstood. And because all this kind of fake news or something, like they like to say future, you know, like, and there's this, maybe a startup, we are dealing with this kind of how to manage this frustration.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with that.
So now we can go more into the life of an entrepreneur. So how does a day for you look like?
So I think like first of all, like every day is different, but there are some things that are repetitive that I can talk about. So maybe from the more personal stuff, like because we have all the pandemic, etc. I go by bicycle to work. So I have a nice small ride in the morning, which also helps to get you started in the day. I try to stack my meetings either in the first part of the day or the second part of the day to get some uninterrupted 2, 3, 4 hours of more deep walks where I can go into some topics more deeper than usual. I think the worst thing that can happen is you have like meeting every second hour or something.
Yeah, that's terrible.
It's like, you know, you're going out of work and like, I did nothing. So that's something that I also try to do. It's not always possible, of course, but you need to try. And I finish usually around 6 p.m. or so, and go back home for a dinner with my bicycle all year. Even
so that's super cool. So, and what are you doing with your spare time and the weekends?
So I do a bit of sports, but maybe one more interesting thing that isn't like so usual is that I have a private pilot license. So sometimes I do a bit of flying with my local aero club. So I rent a Cessna or small Tecnam and go flying around the neighborhood and some neighboring cities.
Do you have some golden rules for living?
I I don't think I have golden rules of living, but one thing that I'm very fortunate to have is like I love what I do, and I probably couldn't be effective if I didn't. So maybe that's some kind of golden rule that if you love what you do, like you don't really feel you are at work. Like,
do you have a favorite book you would like to recommend?
so I don't have a favorite book. I could recommend maybe some of the interesting Twitter, LinkedIn profiles where I follow, because they are putting a lot of very valuable articles and knowledge. A couple that are interesting, especially for startups, is Jason Lemkin from SAST. Like a lot of great like advice and interesting materials. Also, the conference is wonderful, but now the thing is online. There's still a lot of nice written materials. And the other is Christoph Jans from Point 9 Capital. They put a lot of interesting things regarding the startups, fundraising, growing, sales, etc. And maybe last one on the privacy end, because that's also something that I follow very closely. It's Alexander Hunt from Think Privacy. He's an expert. He did some lobbying himself in the EU, as well as he does a lot of consultancy around privacy and puts together a very interesting content as well.
Well, thank you very much, Maciej. Thank you very much for the conversation.
Thank you very much for having me.